All right, everybody, thanks for joining me tonight for the learning of Parashat Hashavua, Parashat Mishpatim. B'ezrat Hashem, tonight we are sponsored by my dear friend, Mr. Yitzchak Soleimani, and family, for the success and well-being of his family. B'ezrat Hashem, may the zechut of our learning bring him much success and only good news for him and his family. And we'd like to also dedicate tonight's learning Leilui Nishmat Eliyahu ben Rosina. May his neshama go higher and higher in Gan Eden. Also, Leilui Nishmat Rabbi Baruch ben Sivya and Aviva Tzipor bat Rivka. May the neshamot go higher and higher in Gan Eden, and may they be benitzei Yosher for us and for all of Klal Yisrael. And also for the refuah shlema of Malkiel ben Soraya and Nejatola ben Tavus, and Avi ben Sarah. May they all have a refuah shlema b'toch shar cholei Yisrael. Okay, here we go.
Menachem ben Khurshid.
And of course, refuah shlema Menachem ben Khurshid as well. May Hashem send him a speedy recovery very quickly. B'toch shar cholei Yisrael. Amen. Okay, so this parasha has an incredible amount of mitzvot to talk about, and there's no way to get through all of them in this short amount of time that we have. So I want to focus actually on one of them tonight, which is in and of itself a very, I thought, interesting discussion to have. And it's actually in the first aliyah of this week's parasha, and it talks about the following situation. When you have people that are fighting, and they are fighting, and one guy hits the other with a stone or with a punch, the guy does not die, but he becomes ill and he's in bed. He can't function normally. If he gets up, he's able to walk around on his cane. The person who hit him is not going to be punished with any kind of death penalty, but he does have payments to make. He does have to pay for his shevet, which means the time that he was unable to work, his unemployment. And he also has to cover his medical bills. Now, the truth of the matter is that there are 5 payments that a person has to make when he hits another person. He has to pay nezek, he has to pay tsa'ar, he has to pay ripui, he has to pay boshet, right? So there are a bunch of different things that he must pay. So over here we just, and shevet is the unemployment. So here 2 of them are mentioned, right? Now, the question over here is like this. What is the meaning of the double language, verapo yerapeh? And healed, he shall surely be healed. So the Gemara famously tells us a line which is kind of hard to understand. The Gemara tells us in Masechet Brachot and in other places as well, Tana devei Rabbi Ishmael, verapo yerapeh. He shall heal, he shall surely be healed, which means that the fellow has to pay for the medical bills of this guy. So the doctor had to stitch him up. He had to do all kinds of things for him, right? So what is the meaning of this double language? Over here says Rabbi Yossi, Mikan shenitna reshut larofe lerapot. From here we see there's reshut. There is permission for a doctor to provide healing. Mikan. Over here we see that there is permission for the doctor to heal. And the question that is very obvious is, why exactly would a doctor need permission to heal someone? It's as if to say that if not for this pasuk that we just learned now, Rabbi Yossi is telling us that you should know this pasuk is a big one. It's very big. It's really huge. The entire medical industry is saved because of this pasuk. Mikan. From here you should know shenitna reshut larofe lerapot, that the doctor has the right. He's permitted to provide healing to somebody. Question: why do you need that permission? Right? What is the reason for that? So I would like to share with you tonight a very interesting discussion that the Rishonim have about this question. the Ramban takes a certain approach to this discussion, and others, the Rabbeinu Yehuda Chassid, the Tosfot HaRosh, the Rambam, they take a different attitude to this discussion, and we'll start with the Ramban. So the Ramban says the following. It's a very interesting Ramban. You can find it in Sefer Vayikra, Perek Chavvav, chapter 26, Pasuk Yud Aleph. The Ramban over there says the following idea. Really interesting. And again, this is the Ramban's take on it, and I'm not trying to say that this is a bottom line for us, but I'm just trying to share with you what he writes over there. He says the following. People who live their lives based on the mitzvot of Hashem, they live their lives according to Torah and according to what Hashem wants, and they have their faith in Hashem, and they live with Hashem. So they understand that if they get sick, that this sickness is actually none other than a punishment from Hashem. This is what the Ramban writes. He says Hashem is the one who brought it onto them, and they feel because of whatever punishment they need to receive right now, Hashem is putting this on them. And just like Hashem put it on them, when their punishment is finished, Hashem will take it away from them. And these people, says the Ramban, they don't need to go to the doctor. They don't feel any need. They feel that whatever illness they are suffering through right now is a punishment. It's because of their spirituality that is lacking and that is failing in some way, that Hashem is waking them up with this punishment. And therefore, says the Ramban, these people don't go to a doctor because they're on this level that they understand when Hashem wants, He'll take away the punishment. My punishment is up, and that's it. Okay, says the Ramban, that is category number one of people. Then says the Ramban, there were people that they weren't thinking about this the same way. They didn't look at their illness as a punishment. But they said, here's a situation that we're ill, we have to cure the illness. So they got involved in medicine right away. Now, when they did that, says the Ramban, they did that because of a lack of proper understanding of how things work. They look at it as if nature is in charge, in control of what's going on. And therefore, they say, look, let's deal with this in a way that we can get rid of this problem. Let's approach medicine, let's try and heal ourselves, and let us try and get rid of whatever is bothering us that way. So says the Ramban, these are people that are looking at the side effect. They're not looking at the root of the problem. The root of the problem is a spiritual problem, that they're not getting the proper spiritual either nourishment, or they're harming themselves with whatever it is that they're doing, and Hashem is trying to wake them up. And instead of addressing that issue, which is the main issue, they are trying to get rid of the side effect of that issue, which is the illness that has come as a wake-up call to them. That, says the Ramban, is what is going on when people run to medicine. Says the Ramban, so now we have a little bit of a better idea as to why a doctor would need permission to heal somebody. So the Ramban says the following. Mikan, this pasuk says, from here we see, from the fact that the Torah says that the assailant has to pay for the medical bills of this individual that he harmed, we see that a doctor has permission to heal somebody, to provide medical care and give medical attention to somebody. So says the Ramban, you know why you needed that permission? Because the doctor might say, look, this guy is somebody that is failing in his emunah. And really, I don't want to get involved with him. Why should I get involved? Really, this is somebody that needs to address his situation. And he's not. He's coming to me instead. Instead of looking inside and digging deep down inside and trying to figure out how he can improve himself and become better in his Torah and mitzvot, he's coming to me to heal him, right? And he's not doing the main thing, which is turning to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So guess what? Will my help do anything for him? I don't even know if it'll do anything. He might die in my arms. And then people will say, oh, he died by me. So that's not going to be good for me, right? So we say to him, listen, you're a doctor. You're fluent in medicine. You have permission to do yours, which means you have permission to help somebody that has come to you asking you for help. You don't have to make these calculations about him and his spirituality. And that's not your business. Mikan, from here, it's true what you're thinking. This guy is thinking wrong. He's got the wrong mindset. He's trying to address the symptoms. He's not trying to address the core issue. But nevertheless, you are a person who is involved in medicine. You know what's going on. You have the right to help him. Right? Don't say, look, I do have the proper emunah, right? And Hashem is the one that's going to heal you. So what are you coming to me for? Don't say that, we tell the doctor. We say to the doctor, you do what you can do, right? These people are already involved in medicine. Maybe they shouldn't have been. Maybe they should be on a higher spiritual level. That's not your calculation. So mikan shenitna reshut larofe lerapot. From here, we see that there is permission for a doctor to provide healing in spite of the person's negative character traits, that he's not turning to Hashem. Instead, he's running to the medication. Right? You see, this is the claim that was actually claimed against King Asa. There was one very righteous king his name was King Asa. Okay? Funny enough, it's interesting. Asa is very similar to the word asuta, which means refuah, healing. And it's precisely the issue that he was criticized for. He had a problem with his legs, and he was sick in his legs, and he was criticized for putting his trust in the doctors. Right? He put his faith in the doctors. Again, we're dealing with tzaddikim on levels that are hard to even begin to understand. But to a certain degree, King Asa put too much emphasis and faith in the doctors. So over here, the Ramban is saying, somebody might say, look, here's a person, he's running towards medicine, he's not putting his true faith in Hashem. So then what is the purpose of me doing this healing for him? Why is he doing this? He's got it all wrong. So the Torah tells us, we say to the doctor, you don't worry about him and his spiritual level. You have to help him. Okay, fine. That's what the Ramban, that is the take of the Ramban. So in other words, according to the Ramban, we have here a very interesting discussion. The discussion over here is a discussion of whether one is allowed to seek medical care or not. In other words, says the Ramban, there's an idea that somebody in his right mind, in a state of emunah, would not even go for medicine, look for a doctor. He would open up a Tehillim and he would daven. So therefore, a doctor might look at this and say, what right do I have to treat a patient if this is the wrong attitude? Am I involving myself in something that is incorrect? Am I aiding the guy to do something that is bad for him and his emunah and Hashem? Maybe I don't have permission to be involved in medicine. So there's a problem with medicine itself. Says the Gemara, Amar Rabbi Yossi, Tana de Rabbi Ishmael, Verapo Yerapeh. That's why you need a special pasuk in Parashat Mishpatim to tell you, Mikan, from here, Shenitna Reshut Larofe Lerapot, that a doctor has full permission and full backing from the Torah to give the person the refuah that he needs. So it was a question. It wasn't so simple. That's the way the Ramban views this discussion. Now, very interesting continuation to the opinion of the Ramban. If you open up the Tur in Siman Shin Lamed Vav, the Tur brings down the opinion of the Ramban. The Ramban goes on to say that it is forbidden for a doctor to receive payment for providing medical care to somebody. He's not allowed to receive payment. Look at this very interesting statement from the Ramban. The Ramban says like this. He quotes the Gemara. The Gemara tells us that in the same way that the Torah requires somebody to return a lost object, it says that if somebody loses something and you find it, you know who it belongs to, you have a mitzvah midoraita, hashev teshivem leachicha. You have to return that lost object to your fellow Jew. Okay? No problem. You give it back. V'hashevoto lo. You have to return it to him. Now, the Gemara goes on to say in different sugyot in Shas that in the same way that you have to return a lost object to him, let's say you found his basketball somewhere, right? You have to bring it back to him. So, Kal v'chomer, how much more so if his life is at risk of being lost? His basketball is lost, you have to give it back to him. How much more so if his own life is at risk of being lost? You have to give it back to him, which means if you have the ability to save that person's life, you are required to do so al pi Torah. So says the Ramban, let's say somebody says to you, you know, I know that you are very good at finding things. If you come across my lost basketball or my lost whatever it may be, you know, I would really like it. I would love for you to give it back to me. That would be very meaningful to me. So the guy says, you know, no problem, but I do charge for that. I do charge for returning lost objects. Can you charge for that? So the halacha says, no, you can't. You know why you can't? Because it's a mitzvah from the Torah. You are entitled, however, to charge for what's called schar batala, which means the amount that you would have earned somewhere else, which, let's say you work at a certain job and you get paid by the hour, and you are now, instead of working and involving yourself in making money, so then you are now not doing that, and you are involved in helping this guy get back his lost object. So you are allowed to be paid for the amount of time that you did not work, right? Now, the question of whether you can charge the hourly rate that you make at your job or not, or what a person would rather do for just sitting around and watching somebody's object, that's a discussion amongst the poskim. If you stipulate how much you would normally make, that's something. But the idea of charging for going ahead and returning a lost object is an idea that is not an option, because the act of returning a lost object is a mitzvah from the Torah. Therefore, says the Ramban, in the same way that returning the lost object is a mitzvah from the Torah, so too it's also a mitzvah from the Torah to return a person who's about to lose his life. So return his life to him, which means if medical care is called bringing back his life, giving him a second chance at life, so then in the same way you can't charge for returning a lost object, you also can't charge for providing medical care. It's no different than returning a lost object. You're allowed to charge for the fact that you are not presently involved in your labor, in your work that you normally do, that you could charge him for the fact that you are now preventing me, but because I have to help you with your medical care, you're preventing me from going ahead and working and earning money, I could charge you for that, but I can't charge you for the act itself of providing medical care. That, says the Ramban, is the halacha. Now, it's an incredible thing, right? It's a really incredible thing. So the refuah over here that the Ramban is talking about, which was a whole question, it was a whole big question. So we're saying, look, you could do it, and you can't charge for it, but because it's a big mitzvah, but you could get paid for the fact that you were prevented from earning your livelihood a different way, right? So we have to say that when the Ramban says that it's a big mitzvah to do, so in other words, now that we know that the Torah told us v'rapoe rapeh, which means that the Torah gives us permission for a doctor to heal somebody, right? It wasn't so simple that a doctor is allowed to heal somebody, but now that the Torah told us that a doctor is allowed to heal somebody, so now the Ramban says, okay, so you have a mitzvah to heal him. So therefore, being that it's in this category of things that you're supposed to do, just like returning a lost object, you return somebody's life to him, so you can't charge for it. right? But it's only once the Torah in Parashat Mishpatim told us that you're allowed to do it in the first place that now we can have a discussion whether or not you can charge for it or not. Okay. That is the approach of the Ramban. Like I told you before, the Tosfot Harosh and the Tosfot Rabbeinu Yehuda Chassid took a different approach to this discussion. And they also asked the same question. They asked it in a little bit of a different way. They started off by saying, we don't understand this Gemara. They said the same way. Why would anybody need permission to give medical attention to somebody, to give medical care to somebody? What is wrong with that? Why do I need a Gemara to tell me you should know, since the Torah says over here, that from here we see the Torah allows a doctor to provide healing to somebody. Wait a minute. Why do I need it? Why? It's a mitzvah. The Gemara tells us, you have a mitzvah to return a person's lost object. You have a mitzvah to return his life to himself. Furthermore, they quote a pasuk that says, Lo ta'amod al dam re'echa. You're not allowed to stand by and see your brother die in his blood. You can't do that. Lo ta'amod, you can't just stand around. You have a mitzvah to do something. Right? That's a matter of fact how Hatzalah was started. There was a fellow that was walking in the street and he saw another guy drop dead. He had a heart attack and he didn't know what to do. So he froze and he didn't do anything. And then eventually they got an ambulance and somebody came and the fellow said, had we been here 20 minutes earlier, we could have saved him. And then somebody, I don't know why this person would say such a thing, but somebody said to the guy who was walking with this fellow who died, says, you killed him. You killed him because you didn't do anything. And when he heard those words, he felt so terrible that he said, I can never let this happen again. We have to have some kind of organization that responds to these things, that people who don't know what to do, at least they will come quickly and deal with it. And that's how Hatzalah started. Because of this pasuk, Lo ta'amod al dam re'echa, you can't just stand around and not do anything while somebody's dying. So what exactly is the Torah telling me for that I could heal this guy? I don't need a pasuk v'rapo yarapeh for that. I already know that it's something I'm allowed to do. It says in different places, return the lost object, don't stand by while the guy's dying. What on earth? Why do I have to have a pasuk that says you could heal this person? So the Ramban answered, because you don't necessarily know that you're allowed to heal somebody. It's a lack of faith. It's a whole thing. Fine. They're saying, no. You know what this pasuk is coming to say? This pasuk is coming to say, v'rapo yarapeh means that mikan shenitna reshut larofeh lerapot. From here we see that the doctor has the right to heal, and a couple more words, and get paid. This pasuk is a pasuk about, like we started off, payments. It's a question of a fellow who hit somebody, and now he has to pay for his unemployment, and now he has to pay for damages, and he also has to pay the medical bills. From here, these two Rishonim learned that this pasuk is coming to teach us not that they could do healing. Of course we know they could do healing. There's no question about whether they can do or can't do healing for somebody who needs healing. That's not the question. The question was, can they get paid? And this pasuk comes to teach us that a doctor is allowed to get paid for his services, not just get paid for his schar batala, for what it would be worth for him to just kind of sit around and not do anything. How much would somebody rather get paid and not work? Right? That figure is not what we're talking about. From here, they learn that this pasuk is specifically coming to allow a doctor to charge for his services. That's the meaning of this pasuk. Okay, so we see we've got here two totally different approaches to how to understand this pasuk, and also to how to understand whether medicine is something that a person should get involved in at all or not, right? The Ramban is saying that somebody on a high level of faith would not even go anywhere near it, and he doesn't need to, and he only wants to improve himself and work on himself spiritually, and that will be his refuah. and there are others who are on a lower level spiritually, and they go to doctors and they run to medicine, right? And for those people that do that, the doctor doesn't have to give them a musar shmuz and say to them, what are you guys doing? The doctor is allowed to heal them. That's the way the Ramban learned. But these Rishonim are saying, no, what's going on over here? Of course you can go and get a doctor and he'll heal you and everything is good. The question is, can he get paid? Yes, he can get paid. Okay. So now there's an interesting discussion that comes up in a Mishnah in Masechet Pesachim, chapter 4, Mishnah number 9. And over there it says that there were 6 things that Chizkiyahu HaMelech, the great king Chizkiyahu, did, that 3 of them, the Chachamim admitted that he did something very good and very positive, and 3 other things they didn't like what he did. Let's talk about one of the 3 things that he did that the Chachamim were very happy about. So I'll read to you the words. Chizkiyahu ganaz sefer refuot. Chizkiyahu hid the book of refuot. Refuot means healings, seemingly books of something to do with enabling a person to heal from an illness. Chizkiyahu hid those books away. He banned them. He didn't allow them to be read. Now, what exactly is this Sefer Refuot? It says the Chachamim were very happy with what he did. Odulo, they agreed this was the proper thing to do. So if you look at Rabbi Ovadia Mibartanura over there on the commentary in the Mishnah, he brings you down 2 explanations. He says over here the following. Lefi shelo haya libam nichna al cholyam. Okay. Says Rabbi Ovadia Bartanura, the reason that he hid the book of Refuot apparently was because people knew in the back of their minds that, look, if somebody gets sick, worst case, I've got this book of Refuot, and it'll tell me what to do, and I'll be good. I'll be okay. I have the book of Refuot. It'll tell me exactly what to do. Put this amount of this into that, make a mixture, take it 3 times a day, etc. You have a formula for healing. Says Rabbi Ovadia Bartanura, Chizkiyahu put it away, lefi shelo haya libam nichna al cholyam, because their heart was not humbled over their illness. In other words, there's an idea that when somebody gets sick, he's supposed to have his heart humbled because of his illness. And that was missing because of their awareness of this book of Refuot, and that was helping them to get better. So they didn't have that humility which the illness was which they were supposed to come to. That humility and that humbleness wasn't there. Then says Rabbi Ovadia Bartanura, the Rambam Piresh. The Rambam says, you want to know what the Sefer Refuot was? He says, Sefer Modia Me'inyanei Tzurot HaKochavim. It was a book that informed everybody about certain stars in the sky and their shapes. Shetzura plonit ha'asuya bizman ve'et yadua. If you make an image of that star at a certain known time, that image, if you then put it, I'm assuming you're putting it on the patient, merapat micholi ploni, is able to heal from such and such illness. Now, v'zeh, says the Rambam, this haya karov le'atota beriot achar avodat kochavim. This was something that was close to causing people to go after idolatry, ulekach gnazo, and that's why he hid it. So in other words, says the Rambam, there was nothing to do here with humility. It was a question of, would people, God forbid, look at this and say, wow, so there's this whole world of medicine that if you draw an image of a certain particular star at a certain time, and then you put it on the guy, and it's going to heal him. And this was a book that apparently was well-known, people were using it, and it was working. And says the Rambam, it was close to bringing people to worship the stars, which is idolatry. Wow. So says the Rambam, a totally different shot. So Rabbi Ovadia Bar Tanura brings here two explanations. Says Rabbi Ovadia Bar Tanura, I have two pshatim here, two different explanations. The first pshat is saying that the book of Refuot is a standard book of medicine. The second pshat is saying, no, it's not a standard book of medicine. It's a book of an alternative type of medicine that has to do with stars and pictures of stars that apparently when you put it onto these people, it would heal them. And it was close to bringing them to idolatry. So you see over here in this Mishnah, in the two comments of Rabbi Ovadia Bar Tanura, one representing one approach, the other representing the Rambam, that you see it's really the same machloket between the Ramban and the Tosfot Arosh and Rabbi Yehuda Chassid. You can hear the words of the Ramban in the first pshat. The first pshat is saying over here, it was a book of regular medicine, Sefer Refuot, a book of medicine. Okay? Book of regular medicine. So now, what's the problem? Why would he hide it? Oh, you know why he would hide it? Because people are supposed to become humble from their illness. They're supposed to turn to Hashem and daven to Hashem and ask Hashem for refu'ah. And that's the reason that Chizkiyahu got rid of it, because they weren't doing that anymore. Their hearts weren't becoming humble anymore because they had this book of medicine. And it was just that. It wasn't some kind of crazy thing. It was simply a book of regular medicine. And that's what Chizkiyahu got rid of. Why? Because he decided that even though the Torah says that a doctor is allowed to heal and regular medicine is not a problem, but we want to elevate our people to a higher spiritual level, that they should turn to Hashem and that they shouldn't rely on medicine. That's the first explanation of Rabbi Ovadia Bar Tanura. It's mamash the same words as the Ramban. What's the Rambam saying? The Rambam says, no, what are you talking about? God forbid. Is get rid of the book of medicine? Are you really? There's a problem with the book of medicine? That's not the point. The point is not there's a problem with the book of medicine. It was a very weird type of medicine that did kind of almost like esoteric type of medicine. That if you make an image of a certain star at a certain time and you put it on the person, it causes them to have refuah. It's going to bring people to idolatry. That type of medicine, get rid of. Right? That's a bad medicine. But regular medicine, what's the problem? So over here, what can we say? The Ramban is saying that a doctor, right, that this pasuk is coming to say that a doctor is allowed to do medicine in general. And the other Rishonim are saying, no, this pasuk is not saying that you could, of course you could do medicine in general. That's not the question. The question was, could you get paid? And of course, if you look in the Rambam over here on the Perusha Mishnayot does say, right, at least some learn this in the Rambam, that he could get paid for his medicine, for his caring of patients. Okay. So that is a point that I wanted to just, first of all, throw out there the two approaches that I was just talking about in medicine. Is it a simple thing? Is it not a simple thing? Etc., like we just discussed. Now, the most interesting thing here is that both the Rambam and the Ramban of the greatest Chachamim of the generations were also physicians. The Rambam was a physician. He was the physician to the king of Egypt. He was a very famous physician. So was the Ramban. And many of the greatest Chachamim of the Jewish people were physicians. The Seforno was a physician. The Rambam actually goes on to detail in a letter to Rabbi Shemuel ibn Tibun, the one who translated all of the great works that were written in Arabic. He translated Chovot HaLevavot, for example. He's the one who translated it into Hebrew. So he writes to Rabbi Shemuel ibn Tibun. He says to him, look, my day is the Rambam writes to him. He says, my day is absolutely insane. He says in a letter, he says, he doesn't use those words, just an expression, but he says, I'll read to you the words of the Rambam inside. He says, if there's something wrong with the king, I have to help him, I have to heal him, I have to take care of him in the morning. ואני רוב היום בבית המלך וכולי. He says, כללו של דבר. He says, this is my general day. כל יום ויום אני עולה על קהירה בהשכמה. Every day I go to Cairo in the morning. וכשלא יהיה שם שום מכשול, if everything is okay, ולא יתחדש שם שום חידוש, אשוב למצרים אחר חצי היום. I go after half of a day back to where I was, where I live in Egypt. על כל פנים לא אגיע קודם, I don't ever reach before חצות. ואני מתרעב. At that point I'm very hungry, I'm like starving. ואמצע החצרות כולן מלאות בני אדם, and I find that the hallways are full of people on my way back. גויים ויהודים באים, Gentiles, Jews, they're all there. חשוב ובלתי חשוב, important people, not important people, so to say. שופטים, שוטרים, I have got judges, I've got officers, אוהבים ושונאים, people who love me, people who hate me. ערב רב, I've got the ערב רב coming after me too. ידעו את שובי, they know when I come back. I get off of my animal, I wash my hands, I go out to talk to them for just a little bit, just to see that I acknowledge them and I tell them, please don't be upset at me. Just wait for a little while I eat something small. It's just a very small moment. I go out and I heal them. אצא לרפאותם, לכתוב להם פתקות, נוסחאות, רפואת חוליהם. I write for them details of their prescriptions, what they should do, what they should take, etc. He says, and then I'm out. He says, לא יסור הנכנס ויוצא הלילה. Until nighttime, I'm dealing with all these people, right? He says, באמונת התורה, I swear to you, basically. עד סוף 2 שעות מן הלילה יותר, אספר להם, מצווה להם, אדבר עמהם. He says, I'm with them until the night. And then eventually I lie down on my back, מרוב עייפות, ואני בתכלית החולשה, I'm at the end of my strength, I've got no strength left. לא אוכל לדבר, I don't even have time to speak. I'm just trying to read to you what the Rambam writes about himself, about his daily schedule. סוף דבר, לא יוכל אחד מישראל לדבר אליי או להתחבר או להתבודד עמי, זולת יום השבת. The only time people can have a real conversation with me is on Shabbat. אז יבואו כל הקהל ורובם אחר התפילה, then most of the קהל comes after the davening, and then I give my shiur to the tzibur, what they should do the whole week, etc. He says, and I only told you a little bit of what's actually going on. So you understand what kind of physician the Rambam was. He was so busy with people from morning till night, every single day with the king and with people, and right, a devoted physician, right? And this leads to the following very important question. The Gemara in Masechet Kiddushin, I'm sure you all know where I'm going with this. The Gemara in Masechet Kiddushin says a very famous Gemara. It says the famous words, Tov Shebarofim, לגהינם, which means the best of the doctors go to Gehinam. They get Gehinam, which means the world that is not a good place to be after a person, after 120 years. So the obvious question is, wait a second. The Rambam was not only a doctor, but a devoted doctor to no end. The Ramban was a devoted doctor. The Sephorno was a devoted. Many of the great Rishonim were doctors. Forget about Rishonim. Even in the Gemara already, Masechet Tanit, Abba Uman, the famous story about Abba Uman, who wouldn't charge poor people, who was very tzanua when he had to deal with ladies, and it says that Hashem would send a heavenly hello to him every morning, and other Amoraim only got it once a month, once a week, once a year. He got a shalom aleichem from Hashem every day. The Gemara is Abba Uman, Masechet Tanit. So, what exactly does it mean when the Gemara says in Masechet Kiddushin, Tov shebarofim legeheinam, that the best of the doctors goes to Gehinam? What does that mean exactly? So over here, I'm going to share with you a few answers that I saw to address this question. Because again, like we've been learning, they did a mitzvah. They did a huge mitzvah. Lo ta'amod al dam re'echa. Right? V'hashevoto lo. You have to return a lost object. You have to return the guy's lost life to him. Huge mitzvah. What Gehinam? Why is the person going to Gehinam? So over here says Rashi. Rashi over there answers the question. And he says, because the doctor, first of all, is somebody who knows how to maintain himself well. Eats correctly, takes care of himself. And therefore, he's not afraid of any illness. And he knows that he's doing everything that he needs to in order to be healthy. So therefore, he's not humble before Hashem. and he's got arrogance. Ooh, so that is a reason to go to Gehinam. That's the worst. Arrogance is the worst. Another point Rashi makes is that sometimes a doctor that's not careful might kill somebody. Malpractice. He might actually do something that causes someone to lose his life. That could be. We know that, unfortunately, far too often, doctors have made big boo-boos that have cost people their lives. And a third point is that sometimes a doctor has the ability and the opportunity to do chesed with a poor person who can't pay, and he fails to do so. So he can heal somebody who's a poor man, and he doesn't do that. That's also a reason, says Rashi, that the person would go to Gehinam. That's Rashi. Then comes the Maharsha. The Maharsha says the problem that this Mishnah is talking about, Masechet Kiddushin, is when you have a doctor who considers himself an expert. He's unmatched. He's got such great knowledge. He trusts his expert knowledge, and he's so arrogant. And assumes, what happens is that he'll assume that this patient needs a certain type of medicine because he knows everything and he's been there and he's done that and he's got experience, etc. But he was too arrogant to properly analyze the case of this specific patient, and therefore he ends up killing him. So he should have consulted with other doctors, and he failed to do that. That was something that was sakanat nefashot, and instead of treating it with the proper respect that it deserved, he didn't do that. So for that reason, that fellow, that expert, is going to the Gehinam. Then comes along Rabbi Akiva Eiger. Rabbi Akiva Eiger says another pshat. Rabbi Akiva Eiger ala Torah says, he says, what happens is like this. The doctor, it doesn't talk, this line is misinterpreted, says Rabbi Akiva Eiger. It's not talking about doctors going to Gehinam. No, it's talking about an average guy. But it's talking about how there are certain very good qualities that a doctor has, which if are used by a regular person, that would take that regular person to Gehinam. So he says, for example, cruelty. Like, for example, when you have to cut somebody, let's say you have an infection and they have to get to a certain part of the body and they have to slice open a part to drain it, right? So that's a certain level of cruelty. Imagine, if you don't have anesthesia and all this kind of stuff, back in the day, this could be something that really hurts somebody. And the doctor has to say, look, I don't care how much you're in pain. If you want me to heal you, this is what I got to do. So he has to apply a certain cruelty. He's going to cause bleeding. Or maybe he's going to lie to a patient about the patient's state of being. He's going to tell him, yeah, look, everything's going to be fine. Don't worry about it. You're going to be okay, right? He's going to want to cheer him up, and he's going to lie to him in order to get him to cheer up when he knows that his situation is actually not that good. So, for example, those qualities of being cruel, being able to, cut somebody and cause him to bleed, and being all those things, right, that he needs to be a good doctor, or even to lie to somebody in order to get him to cheer up, right? So, in order to tell him that his situation is better than what it actually is, right? Which a doctor might find the need to do sometimes. So, those qualities are there for doctors. That is the tov shebarofim. A good doctor has those qualities. But if you, a regular guy, take those qualities and use them for yourself, not in the field of medicine, that guy's going to Gehinam. That's where Rabbi Akiva Eiger learns. A person who decides to be cruel, and he's not a doctor, he's not healing somebody with his cruelty. A person that decides to lie, and he's not trying to cheer up a patient to make him feel better. That guy who's using the tov, the good qualities of the rofim, that is in order to gain his own well-being, tov shebarofim legeheinam. That is Gehinam. That is that person who's not a doctor and he's using these qualities for his own benefit. That is going to take him to Gehinam. Okay. Now, comes along the Otzar HaPlaot and says, in so many words, basically the same idea that we said until now, but just in a much, I think, more simple way. And he says, the idea of Tov Shebarofim LeGehinam is the following. A doctor who knows that he's just a shaliach is good. A doctor who knows, look, I studied medicine, I did my best to know how to operate, how to do whatever it is I need to do. he knows that he is a shaliach of Hashem to bring healing to somebody, that's the good thing. If a doctor thinks that he's the one who is doing everything, if he thinks kochi ve'otzem yadi asa li et hachayil hazeh, he thinks that my strength and my hands are the ones that are doing everything, so he's a Baal Ga'ava, he's arrogant, and it's similar to what we said before, and he's a kofer, God forbid, he's denying the hand of God in his medicine, in his medical care, that person is going to reach Gehinam. Okay, so, and one last point that I saw from the Otzar Pelaot about such a person, such a doctor, who feels that he himself is the one who's doing everything. So he says beautifully, Tov in Gematria is 17. Tet is 9. Tet is 9. Vav is 6. So 9 plus 6 is 15. Bet is 2. So 15 plus 2 is 17. As you know, the Amidah originally was written with 18 berachot. Now, one of those berachot is Refa'enu, which is the blessing where we're asking Hashem to heal us. Refa'enu Hashem v'nerafeh. Please Hashem heal us. Now, says the Otzar Pelaot in the name of his father beautifully. He says, look at this. He says a person who's a doctor of that type of nature, where he thinks that he's the one who's in charge and he's doing the healing and he's the one who is controlling everything. So such a doctor, he has basically deleted one of the blessings of the Shemoneh Esrei from his Amidah. That blessing of Refa'enu, he says, it's not Hashem who's healing, it's me. So he minused one of the 18. So what is he left with? He's left with Tov, with Tet Vav Bet, which is 17. So Tov Shebarofim, meaning if a guy conducts himself like that, and he doesn't believe that it's Yad Hashem who's running everything, so he's basically deleting one of the brachot from the Shemoneh Esrei, and now instead of having 18 brachot, including Refa'enu, heal us Hashem, is gone, and now he's left with 17 brachot. Very powerful point. So, what we can learn from all of this, I think, in summary, is the idea that a person has to go in with the proper attitude when he needs healing. And the Ramban, although it doesn't seem like we hold the halacha follows the Ramban, it seems like we pretty much always do turn to medicine right away. But the lesson the Ramban is teaching us is an important lesson as well, which is that although we turn to medicine and we turn to doctors for help as well, commonly, but the truth of the matter is it's no less important to turn to Hashem as well and to ask for Hashem to heal us. And as a matter of fact, it's brought down from how Ishmael was praying for he was crying because he didn't have any water in the desert, and his mother was praying for him, and his mother was a prophetess who saw malachim. Who did Hashem listen to? Right? Hashem listened to Ishmael, right? Vayishma Hashem el kol anar. Hashem listened to the prayer of Ishmael. When a person who's sick prays for himself, it's much more powerful because he's the one who's feeling it, going through the struggle. So there's a need for the person who's involved, like Rabbi Yavadi Bartanur said in the Mishnah, to humble himself, to make himself humble before Hashem, to understand that there's a message here in the illness that he's experiencing. There's something here that he needs to work on. There's some kind of a message that he has to understand from what's going on, and not just say, oh, I'm sick, let me run to a doctor. Because to a certain extent, you're dealing with a symptom, not the main issue. The main issue, as a Jew, we believe, is always our spirituality. So that's a very important thing. So that's number one. Number two, it's important that the doctor as well has the proper thought when going through what's going on. It's important that the Jew remembers that the doctor is not the one who's providing the healing. He's the shaliach of Hashem to provide the healing for this person. And we don't put our faith and trust in, we want that we do the hishtadlut to get the best doctor, that somebody that knows exactly what needs to be done. We don't play games with that. But at the same time, we rely on Hashem to guide us and the doctor as well to make sure that the person has a refuah shlema. So that's important to have in mind. Just, the thought that comes to mind is the story about my Rebbe of Belsky, alav shalom, who they weren't sure after his esophagus burst. They weren't sure whether to transfer him from Maimonides to, I think it was Columbia, or to Cornell, or some other hospital where they had supposedly better specialists to take care of him. And Rab David Feinstein told the family to ask him. He was able to speak. He was aware of what was going on at the time. So they asked him, "What do you want to do?" And Rav Belsky said that he, God forbid, did not want to embarrass a Jewish doctor at Maimonides to say that he is incapable of performing whatever needs to be performed on him, whatever surgery it may be. And he felt that if Hashem wants him to be the shaliach, to bring about his refuah, then Hashem will have him be the shaliach to bring about his refuah. It's a very, very uncommon way of thinking about a situation as dire and as severe as that. But it turned out to be the right decision because, first of all, this whatever he needed to happen, Baruch Hashem, it was a successful surgery. But he had actually gone into cardiac arrest about an hour later. And had he been transferred to a different hospital in transit, his chances of surviving would have been much less, which is, really a miraculous, remarkable thing. But just the thought to think about it as what is really happening here. What's really happening here is that Hashem is the one who is bringing me whatever it is that I am in, whatever I'm going through right now. And Hashem is also the one who is sending me a shaliach, a faithful, wonderful shaliach who has devoted his time, energy, and years of his life to do what he's doing in order to heal me. So Hashem is sending me a shaliach to heal me as well, but it's really ultimately from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Interesting question that came up based on this whole entire discussion. Let's say a person is a doctor, and after all that we learned, I think the answer is going to be obvious, but can a doctor choose to ignore a request for somebody to heal him? Let's say he's sitting at home and he hears that so-and-so is asking him to come help. He needs somebody to do refuah for him or not. So very interesting. The Sefer Baruch She'amar, meaning this doctor is going to now say, look, I have other people in town that can do that. Right now I'm eating dinner with my family. I'm not interested. There are like 10 other doctors here in the neighborhood. Why me? Right? So that question was asked to, I believe it was Rabbi Baruch Epstein. I think it was the son of the Torah Tmima or the Torah Tmima himself. I don't know. But in his Sefer Baruch She'amar, he brings an interesting Gemara from Masechet Avodah Zarah that describes the moment at which suffering comes to a person. And it says over there, B'sha'ah shemeshagrim yisurim al ha'adam, at a time when they send yisurim, which means suffering, to a person, mashbi'im otam, in Shamayim they make those yisurim swear, shelo yetzu min ha'adam, that they should not leave this person, right, until Yom Ploni, until day so-and-so, B'sha'ah Ploni, at this hour, Ve'al yedei rofeh Ploni v'sam Ploni, and through this doctor and through that medicine. So it could have been decreed, says the Baruch She'amar, that this guy, this doctor who's being sought by these people, is the doctor that in Shamayim was decreed to be the one to provide this healing. So if he doesn't go, it could be actually that this person won't get better. And obviously, based on what we said until now, from the fact that it says that lo ta'amod al dam re'echa, that a person is required not to stand by idly while his fellow is, God forbid, dying, so he doesn't really have much of a choice. That's why the Shulchan Aruch says in Siman Shim Lamed Vav, v'monea atzmo, if a person holds himself back from providing this healing, in no uncertain terms, Rabotai, harei zeh shofech damim. This guy, according to Shulchan Aruch, is called a person who is spilling blood, which is a terrible thing. So for that reason, it seems pretty clear that a doctor that has the ability to provide the healing doesn't really have much of a choice but to provide the healing. although it might seem to be inconvenient, but if he's asked, he must really go through with it, because it's very possible that it was decreed in Shemaim that this suffering will only leave this person through him and nobody else, which is, again, quite an amazing thing to understand. Yiratzon, may it be the will of Hashem, that by us learning about doctors and about all these different discussions and about saving people, that we should never need to have any medical care, medical attention, healing. We should be healthy and we should not know of any suffering. Be'ezrat Hashem, I'm going to call it a night. Thank you for joining me. Be'ezrat Hashem, we continue next week. Bli Neder, I would like to continue the Shirim on the Parsha Tuesday nights, Bli Neder. I think it's more convenient for a lot of people. So Be'ezrat Hashem, we're going to continue at that time. Thank you so much for joining me, and call to good night, everybody.